ArTechník podcast for Sunday, June 3rd, 2012.
Just a little
I saw Scarlett Johansson there covering all the tunes.
Just kicking it right off with one of your classic impressions, huh?
Oh, it sounds like a 50s. Oh, your classic impressions.
I want to hear Tom Waits sing a lullaby.
Lullaby.
Oh, I'm sleepy now.
I'm going to have nightmares for the rest of my life.
Man with a knife.
Oh, man. That was the impression that killed Jeff. Oh, Tom Waits.
If anyone
Tom waits for you.
ask not for whom the Tom waits.
Tom waits for you.
That was great.
So here we are.
Welcome to the
ArTechník.
show.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you?
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Adam.
And I'm Tom Waits. I'm Jeff.
I was concerned for a second. I thought maybe we were in the wrong podcast.
Wrong podcast.
You want the one down the hall.
We have a whole studio here. Every room is recording a different podcast.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I'd be part of that.
Yeah.
So we are sitting in a room with a Metropolitan Atlanta Theater Award nominee, Aaron Gottlieb.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
Aaron, could you explain to us a little bit about the MAT Awards? First, you're nominated in
Best Actor in a minor supporting role.
Okay, tell us about the MAT Awards and why you're nominated and what that means.
The MAT Awards are the Metropolitan Atlanta Theater Awards, and they are a organization that recognizes the smaller theaters in Atlanta annually for performances, original works, design, performance, all of the typical awardee sort of stuff, but they're just localized in Atlanta instead of to New York, say, and have less money to put on a big showy presentation so that everybody around the nation has heard of them. But they're a nice award and a nice recognition system that Atlanta has put into place in the last few years. I don't know a whole lot about them. Because they haven't been around forever. They are relatively new in the last few years. I didn't realize we were starting with this.
What was the process how do you get nominated?
Okay, so the various theater companies in Atlanta that qualify for this level submit one or two shows in a season to become eligible shows, and eligible shows have the awards come out. The judges come out. There's a different panel of judges every year, and they come out and they see the shows. And from those eligible shows, you can be nominated, and then the nominees are submitted, and then there's an award ceremony in August, and some more amount of judging will determine whether my nomination leads me in the category. But I find that now that it is me, it's very true. It's an honor just to be nominated. But
who are you wearing?
I'd
the
like
red
to
carpet?
win. Probably Sam Walton.
Was it Sam Walton original?
Well, no, just an off the
just a
rack.
Sam Walton
Yeah.
off the rack. Okay.
So it was founded by Russ Ivey in 2004, recognizing the hard-working individuals that put their time and effort into community and non-union professional theater. I'm in the non-union professional category.
Right.
Which is what makes it different than the Susie Bass Awards, which are also prominent in Atlanta, which focuses on the bigger union regional theater division, which I have not had the fortune to work in yet. But perhaps that's coming down the pike. Anyway, so last fall I played Charles Dabinel Schmendeman in Picasso at the Le Panagile at Onstage Atlanta, and it was a great production. We got actually nominated for light design, sound design. The guy who played Einstein is up for Best Actor in a Leading Role, and I'm sure I'm forgetting things because I'm doing this off the top of my head. So if you are nominated, please don't yell at me that I've forgotten your category. I apologize. And they just announced the musical divisions, and Onstage also got some nominees in their 1940s radio Christmas Carol, which was the other of the two submitted shows. And then I think the Process Theater, which I just did Anti-Mame with, had submitted Lake Bottom Proper, which premiered down in Columbus at the Springer, and then moved up to Atlanta with the Process Theater. Got some recognition as well. But it's really cool. It's exciting. It's not something I've ever gotten to do before. I've never been in a even eligible show to be considered. So it's very nice. I would like to win. I'm not going to lie. That'd be very cool. But what's really nice is I don't know the other three nominees in my category. So I'm free to selfishly wish that I get to win instead of having to feel like I have to support my friends and stuff who are eligible for the same position.
That's a nice out.
Is that horrible?
No.
Okay, good.
No. I knew that. Yeah, that was going to come next. Right.
So that's where
Wars
I'm at.
references are new.
Here's how the shows are reviewed and judged. So, because I don't know, there's a judges panel, and then once the season concludes, the judges begin voting for the top nominees. It's done online via a secure website, so we're going to have to figure out how to hack that and stuff the ballot box.
I bet our listeners can figure it out. If you know how to hack into... What are we hacking into?
The Matt Theater Awards secure website.
Into that.
Yeah.
Then contact us.
Jeff suggested it'd be great if I ran, even though the rest of it is not really a public election or anything. He's like, I should run it like a prom king campaign and be like, vote Aaron for the Matt Awards, which would be a silly way to do it all.
Put you on the side of a bus. Not a picture, but you.
Strap him.
Yeah.
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 I have lots of bungees.
I know.
So that's what's up with me.
Yeah.
Over here we have TV's Jeff Holbrook.
Oh, yeah.
He's starting to get some really sweet bookings out on the professional realm.
Thanks. I'm enjoying it.
Are you allowed to talk about them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. What's funny is that I signed with AMT, my agents, a year ago. And I'm used to, I was able to string together contracts fine in theater, but whenever I signed on with AMT for the film stuff, this is the first time in a year that I've booked.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through that whole year of thinking, oh shit, I signed up for this and I'm never gonna book any work. And all within just this month, I booked national commercial for Herbal Essences. Everyone asks if it's my hair. No, it's not my hair. I played a kind of stoner camera assistant.
Okay.
So
that's the guy, one stoner on the books.
Yeah, exactly. That seems to be what I book mostly. And
well, I was going to build to that point, but okay, it's just right there. All the roles are stoners.
All the roles are stoners. And that was with April Bowlby, who is one of the leads on Drop Dead Diva, and she played Candy on 2.5 Men for a while. And that was a cool thing. It was okay, that's my one off or whatever. But sometime that week I found out I had a callback for Jack's commercial, which is a hamburger chain, and that's a statewide commercial, and that's a cool thing. And then I found out that I had a TV show booking for Drop Dead Diva, which was super fun, and I'm currently on hold. I don't know if I'll book it for a NASCAR commercial.
Do you have any sense on whether the Drop Dead Diva audition came at all from the commercial, the Herbal Essences, which you did with the performer?
I don't know. I know that I met a Lifetime exec while I was there who was very young comparatively.
Sure.
I was like, wow, okay, and you're a TV exec. And it was the weirdest experience because the whole audition process happened in Atlanta, and of course they taped the auditions. But this very very nice but very young Lifetime exec is hey, I really liked your performance when I watched it back in New York, and I'm like, oh right, the internet and and that kind of stuff.
The world
and
is flat.
And that was days ago, yeah. And
Yeah.
now here you are. So, maybe he gave me an elbow and a nudge towards the show. I don't know. But I'm so excited that my first TV gig was getting to actually play a character and actually have a scene with Margaret Cho and that kind of stuff.
And as I was saying, I'm glad that it's it's not just a role you took. It was actually a fun role on a fun show.
It was fun.
It was like jumping in, nice, really.
Oh, can I tell the ukulele story?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
What
So, the role I was supposed to play is this guy who is he's a ukulele player, and I know how to play guitar, but I neither own nor knew how to play a ukulele. And I find out that tomorrow morning you'll be on set playing ukulele. And I'm like, shit. And I have no idea if they're going to provide me one. I don't dare ask for fear that I will lose the job.
Yeah.
He didn't lie, by the way. It's not like he got the role by promising them.
No,
that-
they never brought it up at
They
all.
just said.
It's not on my resume or anything. Like, I play guitar. They sent me in. They didn't
Wow.
ask if I didn't bring one into the audition
Mm-hmm.
or anything. And I was so nervous at the audition because I hate to force the Star Trek reference early, but the director had directed 3 episodes of Enterprise,
Yeah.
including like Firefly and Buffy and other stuff.
Yeah.
But it was the Enterprise stuff that I was like, ooh, 'cause no one likes that show but me. But so hard not to bring that up. But yeah, I got the ukulele. Our friend Dylan Steffen had one in Atlanta, and it so happened I was sitting in the office at Springer, the Academy office, and Jasmine Anderson was there, who is friends with Dylan and was a former student of ours and worked with us in Athens and stuff. And I was like, do you know anyone that has a ukulele? And she goes, well, Dylan will have one. I go, Dylan's in Atlanta, right? It's like, yeah, give him a call. I've got a ukulele. So as I'm driving into Atlanta, where I'm arranging this uke pickoff, and he lives in the pickup, and he lives in this slightly
urban.
sure. I only had a moment of being concerned for my safety, but I go park in a place that I'm really not supposed to park at, and pick up this ukulele and
Doing a uke drop.
thanks, man. Yeah. And I picked a key and I learned a couple of chords in it, and I had enough guitar stuff that it would transfer. And by the next morning, I was playing ukulele, and people were asking if I would give lessons, and I was like, yeah, gotta go.
I like he got to bring home some props when he was done the promo flyers for the fake gig at the fake coffee house. There's just,
Right.
I don't want to get no spoilers.
No.
Oh, right.
But they were some fun little things that bonus material.
I have a Margaret Cho in an SUV story. Should I share it or should I not?
You should
can move
share
on.
it because
Go
it doesn't
ahead.
really. Yeah, it doesn't,
Okay. Doesn't do anything to first, Margaret Cho was very nice. I enjoyed meeting her, and we had a good experience. That being said, she is by far, I think, the largest celebrity that I actually had a direct encounter with, possibly in my life, certainly for work.
Okay.
Right? We're actually doing a thing together. And it was weird because we shoot all of her coverage, and then they're going to turn around to shoot all my coverage. But it's really hot, and for whatever reason, rather than sending everyone back to their trailers, they say, "Oh, there's a SUV waiting for you guys outside with air conditioning." And we're like, okay.
Are the trailers powered by a generator or attached to the grid? Because it's we're just gonna run this car for an hour.
I know. I thought the same thing. I know. I have no idea. My trailer was about the size of a bathroom, but I was so grateful. I was like, I have a thing I can sit in, because I'm used to doing extra work where you're sitting
in a corral.
Yeah. So we had kind of sort of met at mic check or whatever, kind of, but then suddenly, the next thing I know, Margaret Cho and I are being corralled into this black SUV. The kind of looks like you would off somebody.
Tinted windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot this part of the story.
Bulletproof glass.
Yeah, and so I get in there, and I mean, she's extremely nice. It was just I was just there's nothing to say. We had no reason to really talk
We're
to each other.
sitting in a
And
car.
I don't want to be that guy who's like, let me start a conversation with you, because I'm sure she's gets enough of that from whatever.
Yeah.
So she's sitting there on her phone, and this lady, Carter McIntyre, the other star of the show, comes in, who's incredibly nice the whole time, and thank God he was there, because he sort of bridged the gap so that a conversation sort of allowed to start, because they actually work together or know each other, and it bridged the status gap for me.
It's easier to be the third part of a conversation
Yeah.
than one half of the conversation.
Yeah, and for the most part, I really try to just stay quiet. I mean, and just not be obnoxious. But this lady, there's a knock on the door, and the PA opens the door and is like, "Miss Cho, there's a woman here who won a contest who said to meet you." And she's like, "Oh, she's here? Well, yes." And we're trying to find time to meet. She says, "Well, just go ahead and bring her in now." And this woman suddenly comes into the driver's seat of the SUV, and she and Margaret Cho have this whole conversation, and I think she's like,
and she pulls the key and puts it in the ignition, and she kidnaps you and Margaret Cho all together.
That'd be funny. No.
Oh. Well, your story's good too.
Yeah, well. But anyway.
No, it's very cool. I love that when you win a contest to meet with Margaret Cho, it's just like in the seat of an SUV. It's not like you get to like
sit down and
go
have
to the
coffee.
set or go to the coffee or dinner
Right.
or whatever. It's like, there's Margaret Cho.
Yeah.
Go chat with her.
The joke that I get to take away from this is that she had a protein plate that she was eating. So it was like hamburgers and hot dogs or something. And she offered Carter some, and then she offered me some.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't take any, but I wasn't hungry. But I can now say that Margaret Cho has offered me her meat.
There you go. And if that's
the name
not
of that
worth
tune.
saying.
Anyway, who's got articles?
I've got articles.
Oh, yep. I also have an article.
Okay.
I also have an article.
article.
Princess Peach, teach me of love.
All right. I'm really excited about mine. I'm
Then
going
you
to
start.
claim
go.
starting position today.
Do it.
Okay, so I was wandering around the internets like you do,
Yep.
and I discovered John Bohannon. And John Bohannon has an interesting plan.
Mm-hmm.
He has started a competition called Dance Your PhD. And it's amazing. It is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Basically, graduate students finishing their PhD have to explain their project in dance.
Huh.
And they get dancers to help choreograph and figure out how to communicate the information of very complicated scientific procedure into pure human movement. And I've watched several of them.
Yeah.
And there are captions and stuff along with the dance that like narrates the story. But there's also a link next to each of them that says like, he explains the research in dance here. And I never needed to follow the link. The dance conveyed amazing amounts of scientific information. It was fantastic. My absolute favorite was microstructure property relationships in titanium-2448 components produced by selective laser melting. A love story.
Aw.
It's a man who is playing the titanium and a woman who is playing bone and explaining the research done to make the best of these multiple forms of titanium so that it can mesh with bone for prosthetics.
Oh, wow.
And so the love story is the titanium and
Does that
the
bring us
bone.
a step closer to cyborgs?
I guess so.
Integrated on a bone
Or
level?
pirates.
Yeah.
Titanium bone pirates? oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean that.
Boy.
I don't know that it's like anything active about the titanium. It's like just for prosthetic limbs and hips and whatnot. It is, I guess, a little cyberotic. Basically, by selectively melting with the lasers portions of the titanium, you can create something that is in between the alpha form and the beta form of titanium. The alpha form is very strong and very rigid, but it has trouble melding with the bone. Whereas the beta form is very flexible and porous and can connect to the bone, but then isn't as strong as you want it to be for the structural form.
Mm-hmm.
But by melting parts of the... See, it's very hard to explain, but you watch the dance and it makes sense. Anyway, there's this sort of alpha-beta form that they've designed and created, the TI-2448, created by the laser melting process that makes it flexible and porous enough to connect to the bone and strong enough to act as the support structure. And they dance about it. I mean, that's how they explain the process. There was another one on smell-mediated response to relatedness of potential mates in fruit flies. For the biology category, there was a chemistry about X-ray crystal structure of human protein phosphatase. And I can't explain it necessarily to you, but I feel like I understand the very basic element
Phosphatase,
of...
is that purple stuff?
It was sort of these blue
Sunny D.
pom-pom
Sunny D.
balls.
Yeah, that's where you're going. Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
So that's the first part of the conversation, and then I want to build on that in a second. But go.
But just heck, that's what we do in creative drama. I mean, really, you take one idea and you approach it from several different ways and mediums, through craft, through replay, through dance, through song, through whatever, and you just kind of play it out. I would have a question, only because I've heard a lot of times when they say you take these very complex ideas and issues that need to be discussed, and you kind of reduce them to like some sort of kitschy metaphor or a dance, or you're telling the story through the dance. Do you feel, or does anybody that maybe has been discussing me feel that it maybe oversimplifies things too much, that it's
I think the idea is to oversimplify it for this crystalline communication process.
Okay.
It's not about if you, as a fellow scientist who was going to build on my research, needed this information, I wouldn't bring my dancers into the boardroom and explain it to you purely through dance. This is a way to explain it more completely to the everyman, to the layman. It's like in Michael Frayn's play Copenhagen, where they are discussing the various abstract theoretical physics, and they keep coming back to the idea that it doesn't matter if you and I understand it. It matters if the person on the street understands it enough to do something, to just comprehend it, whether they do something with that information or not. And the idea that if you can't state it simply enough, you haven't learned it well enough yet. And that there's more there must be more you can learn about it so that you can simplify the explanation. So it doesn't tell you the details. It's the idea of saying that I now understand that there are two forms of titanium and how they bond to bone. I don't know how to actually make it myself, but that wasn't the information they were trying to convey to me. They were trying to give me the elevator speech of their PhD in dance form.
So it's like an analogy could be.
But it's more complete than an analogy or a pithy statement. I
was going to say an analogy could be that like a well-crafted Twitter post or well-crafted poem or adaptation or translation of an otherwise word-heavy idea or work that through the very specific choices that they get to make, like in a Twitter post where you've only got so many characters, you're able to convey a lot of nuance and a lot of idea behind the idea without getting jumbled and confused.
Yeah, and I think the multi-sensory element is really, truly part of it, because, now when I can think back to the dance of either this one or the superfluid that I was looking at, the superfluid dance, not the actual superfluid that I was, but this photon
here
superfluid explanation, that was just...
I love it. We had, here at ArTechník Labs, we're developing the best cutting-edge superfluid superconductors and cold fusion technologies. And ballet.
And ballet.
And we can't get a podcast to work.
Nope. Our audio engineers are all continuously fired.
Trapped in superfluid containment units. But just this...
We can split the atom, but we cannot split the audio into 3 separate parts that work properly.
So I think, like I said, it really is. It's about oversimplification.
Yeah.
That's this particular point of its communication.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that was a lame article.
Oh,
that was awesome.
And so there's the competition every year where students submit their work and they can get, a cash prize to help pay off the PhD they're trying to get, which is really cool as an extra bonus.
Who runs this contest again? Like, what's it through?
I think it's from Gonzo Labs.
I like that name.
Touch my.
Sponsored by Science.
It's okay.
That's what it says on the side banner of the website.
Brought to you by Science.
This podcast brought to you by Science. It's out there. No matter what they tell you.
Yeah.
And so they have a physics, chemistry, social science, and biology category that you can enter in. But this idea that dance is so universal that it doesn't have to necessarily be emotions and narrative that it conveys, but just strict scientific data. Granted, it turns into a narrative by the time the dance is complete, but we have
our
been
brains want it to be a narrative.
storytelling
anyway.
forever,
Right.
you
We're
know.
gonna make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Speaking of brains making it, that a couple I was hanging out with last night, she's a visual artist, and she, I know I've heard her tell this story before, that she, I think the community theater, like in the town where she grew up, or maybe there was one near where she was going to college, and they did an evening of where they presented short plays, I guess maybe 10-minute to 30-minute long one acts, and then they had other artists come in and reinterpret their work. And so she's a visual artist, so she did a lot of sketches and drawings, and it was really interesting. She said some of the images that she pulled out, and she enhanced, she would take some of the literal things she was seeing on stage, but then she focused on certain words she was hearing. And there was this one image of one of the main characters in front of a wall that was starting to crumble, and like the bricks literally falling around him. And the actor came up and had seen the picture and said, "Did you mean to make this stone look like a heart?" And of course she was like, she didn't, but she told him, yes, I did.
Of course I did.
Of course I did. But it was just like, like you said, your audience is gonna fill in those blanks for you. They're gonna connect the dots, even if the intention could be completely different than what you started out with.
Fact to fact checklist of dance moves, but you see a narrative emerge.
Yeah.
So he took this process that he had developed, this Dance Your PhD competition, and he took it further to what he dubs a modest proposal. And
like eating babies?
Yeah, like
Okay.
that. But
Okay.
but different. Less baby eating oriented.
Okay. All right.
So he did some mathematics and some research, and he's discovered how much money is wasted in corporate America on bad PowerPoint.
I knew that's where they're going. Yeah.
And that includes the time it takes to put them together, the time it takes to show them in a meeting, how many people average watch a PowerPoint presentation, what their annual salaries are, so how much that time is valued, blah, 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 blah. And he's calculated this great number of the dollars spent involved in bad PowerPoint presentation. Mm-hmm. And then he compares that number to the amount that is in the arts funding from the government.
Oh.
So his proposal is that all of that money is spent to fund artists to convey PowerPoint information, primarily dancers to begin with, but all sorts of artists could then be brought into the corporate boardroom at a salaried rate and present information to the corporate world.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I mean, that's something I could bring into my day job. Like, that's very cool.
Yeah. It could be an interesting just change of mental attitude, even if it doesn't actually result in anything practical. Just that idea of this stuff is for communicating information.
Wow.
You want information communicated. Mm-hmm. Why use PowerPoint when you could use these 6 full-time dancers?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. If I'm just going to assume people don't know. My day job is I run a corporate consulting thing out of a theater that aims to teach companies business skills through stage skills, and with the overall goal of improving, workplace communication. So I would love to find a way to get artists into companies like that to help present information in a more interesting way. Mm-hmm. I could see how it would be hard for them to want to bite maybe initially, And I can see how it would sort of be a special thing because it takes the thing is it takes more prep work, right, to create
Sure.
a thing like that and do it well than it does to create a PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that it might not take more money.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
That if you redistribute the salaries of people putting PowerPoints together, and there are flaws to that logic, I admit,
Yeah.
but it's sort of an interesting concept. But if you can sell it, I will be happy to be one of your improviser PowerPoint live meeting presenters.
That's cool.
Hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, I really like that.
It'd be like a game of slideshow, but with business numbers and...
Sorry, wheels are turning for me. This is fun.
Yeah. It's similar to something I came across, something called playback theater.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I don't
yes,
know this.
this is cool.
Yeah, playback theater. And again, I don't have the information in front of me, and so, but the idea is you get a group of actors, performers, and they are sent to a community or some type of group that's got something going on. Specifically, they were talking about a lot of these playback groups were sent in immediately following like Hurricane Katrina, the tornadoes out in the Midwest, and things like that. And they, they take stories, they take things that are going on surrounding whatever this, big sort of catastrophic, overwhelming event is, and use storytelling, use dance, use improvisation, use they make up songs on the spot, but they take all of this stuff that's going on and try to synthesize it into a show, but like an emotional response.
Yes.
I guess that's what it is. Taking an idea that's so big that you just kind of get overwhelmed by the amount of information and the amount of experiences in there, and you just feel like you don't have any kind of voice, and it tries to give a voice to that group. They've got a couple of like centers, like playback centers, where you can sort of learn this technique scattered around the world. There's one in New York, and I've been looking more and more into it about maybe going there and checking them out. But it sounds like the same. Well, I guess
different but the same.
Different
Yes.
but the same.
It's in
Yeah.
that same family in
Yeah.
the arts tree.
But again, it just goes back to how you want to say why performance is so integral to who we are as a people.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's the first thing that's cut. There is my friend Jeremy Kissling is putting together AATE, American Alliance Theater Education, and their big conference is happening, and they've got a guest speaker, and I cannot remember his name, but he works for the Department of Education, and they've just finished this long-term study of the arts in school, and how they were saying typically out of all of the schools that are in the United States, and this is all of them, they said, kindergarten through high school, typically at all of the schools in the United States, and I don't remember the exact numbers, on visual arts and choral programs, simple music programs, they said 75 to 85% of all schools in the U.S. have one of those things. But out of all the schools in the United States, only 4% have a theater program. And typically those are only secondary education. There's nothing there for, sixth grade or younger, which sucks because I think more than anything, what interests me is not so much putting on a show, but figuring out how you can use theater skills to help approach different life and different kinds of information, social studies, and God, dancing, dancing out science. That sounds awesome. But that's what excites me more than anything. And so,
beyond just the theater skills, you've got empathetic response training and cognitive choice training.
Yeah.
That's just about how to interact with the world, let alone how to interact with arts development.
Yeah.
That if all they're learning is read this, write this report, read this, write this report, and it's not even write this report anymore so much as check this box that says I read this. We're training a single brain path rather than an ever-branching set of options that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And it starts looking like the the public school conspiracy of making easily controllable drones
Yes.
is true, which it probably isn't. But
Probably. Yeah, there's probably not like a conspiracy out there. This is just a
natural occurrence.
right. It's just a helpful side effect to our dystopia future.
Oh, dystopia future.
There is a saying that, I forget who it is, Bill Gates. I'm going to paraphrase it, though. If whenever you automate something, you magnify. If it is efficient, you magnify efficiency. If it's inefficient, you magnify inefficiency. And so I'm thinking when you say school systems and you say these are the programs we follow, I mean any system, but like, if you say we're going to pull back a little bit on arts funding or whatever, then you take that exponentially through the rest of the country, and then it becomes numerically devastating. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah. I like that.
Unfortunately, the pseudopods are getting even bigger and attacking more stuff. Fernbank Science Center in Atlanta, which has been a product of the public school system. It's not the big museum; it's the smaller science center with the planetarium and the hands-on geological displays and stuff. And I remember it vividly from field trips as a child, and it was one of the things that got me sparked and excited about science. Is they are trying to decide right now whether they are going to just close it down wholesale and save that money for something useful.
Jeez.
Oh.
And that's horrible, scary, and sad. I mean, it's like I said, I remember it very vividly. It was something I looked forward to as part of the field trips and getting out of the classroom and starting to see that this was part of the world. Yeah. Even, science was part of the world, that it wasn't just this thing we had to read about and talk about.
Well, science is the world.
Science is the world.
Yeah.
And art is the rest of it.
Yeah.
And everything pretty much falls into those categories.
Well, it's like science is science is the world. Art is debate and interpretation of the world. They're both observations of the world based on experiment and reaction. But one is subjective and one is trying to be absolute. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
anyway.
John Bohannon is one of my new heroes. I think this is just an awesome both
great
job opportunity and exploration of what dance communication can do.
Yeah. Cool beans.
Adam, you got an article?
I do.
All right.
Yay.
All right. This is a book actually that I stumbled upon, but it has a e-reader component.
Mm-hmm.
This book is called Chopsticks.
And
and
the piano thing?
yes, because and that factors into the story. It's called Chopsticks, and this was created by Jessica Anthony and Rodrigo Coral. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was, how is it described? It says Chopsticks is described as a novel. It's an app. It's a website. It's a collage of original drawings, objects, text, videos. It's a love story. It's a mystery. The actual novel that I stumbled across in a bookstore, it's all pictures. There's only a little bit of text, and the text is mostly through newspaper clippings that, again, there's a picture of with certain passages highlighted or underlined. And then the little bit of text is actually IM conversations between the two main characters. And it's just it was just really interesting. It's the basic story is there's this girl named Gloria who goes by Glory in the book, and her mother died, and Glory is this piano prodigy, and her father has sort of laid out her life for her that, she's going to be like the best pianist ever, and so wants her to take world tours and play at Carnegie Hall, and so he's very strict and rigid, and she's already at a young age very well known. what happens is this new boy, Frank, moves in next door, and they fall in love. And, the whole thing is told through IMs and all of these photographs that they take of each other, both together and separate. But then there's also like YouTube videos that they give the links to in the book. And I was told when it was originally set up as almost an exclusive, like online sort of e-reader type thing as an app, that you could actually rearrange the pictures, and the links were there. You could click on them immediately and be redirected to YouTube, and it's just neat. And it's my reaction to it, because I kind of went through the whole thing and did all the interactive stuff. And my reaction to it was very cool. Like, it was amazing that somebody put this together, this sort of linear but not linear story. In the end, it was I had a hard time connecting with the two main characters, like Glory and Frank, because it felt more like a treasure hunt sort of mystery, if that makes any sense. But it was still absolutely amazing, the experience. And that led me to this article that was citing this as an example about how there's the rise of e-readers and everything, and how much of the business of publishing is moving over. How successful has it been? Can you even still call something like this a book when it's so dependent on being interactive?
Yeah.
And the fact that there's really not that many actual words. It's just told through pictures.
And what if any one of those services shut down? Like if YouTube suddenly didn't exist?
Yeah. And the big thing that when they were first putting this project together, the biggest issue that they were having, because a lot of the YouTube videos they were pulling from was a lot of Lawrence Welk, and there's a couple of scenes from The Corpse Bride, that Tim Burton stop motion. And they were running into, copyright issues. They weren't sure stuff that they were linking to, if they could even do that. And some of them were iTunes songs that were playing, and they were getting frustrated that even though they had access to stream the song through the app, then it would start doing all these pop-ups to buy this song, which they didn't want in the book or as part of the experience. And so it was just a lot of interesting problems they were running into. And so there's just a debate about, is this a book? Are all books going to move to e-readers? Apple is just getting into, they're pairing up with a lot of the textbook for schools.
And if that brings prices down, I think that's a fantastic idea. But I don't believe it will bring prices down. I think they'll sell you a set of pixels, and it'll still charge you $200 for a single class book.
Yeah. But, Apple is looking into, and apparently they've released this biology book right now, is just to let people check it out for high school. And it's got you read about whatever the sciencey thing is, and you maybe have an interactive demonstration, or maybe you watch a video clip of whatever it is, and but it was very interesting because there was a study that, pull it up, Joan Gans Cooney, the Joan Gans Cooney Center, which, if anybody recognizes that name through the Children's Television Workshop and Sesame Street, she has a center that does research on how kids learn, because obviously it's useful to her, or her group now, I should say. And they said that they tracked a small group of young children and found that children who were using the enhanced ebook formats recalled less content than those that were using the traditional digital forms, meaning where it was just a digital copy of the page. It wasn't,
instead of like with video and with like interactive elements.
But again, you know, these things are brand new. I'm sure there's not a lot of studies out there yet anyway, but that
maybe it's useful, but we're not quite fine-tuned in on how to make it the most useful thing.
And you know, so it was just interesting, the debate of how much are books just going to be these like digital copies where you're just reading the page, and how much of it is going to be the interactive stuff, or is there a place for both of them?
I am given hope.
Yes.
By a scene in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Yes. Thought you would go there. Yeah.
Yes. Where Bones gives Kirk a book, right? Isn't that right? He gives him
Yes.
glasses, I know. But
Gives
doesn't he
him
also give
glasses.
him a book?
Right. Because he's allergic to the medicine.
The retinol, whatever.
that
Oh
will
my
make him
gosh,
see,
Wow,
yeah.
why? I know that? Why do I know
Yep.
that? Retinox. Anyway. But I don't think books will ever go away. As evident, well, I say that, watch someone in the future is like, but in the same way that, like, records of all things are sort of showing a resurgence. Now I think they'll be different. I
Yeah.
think it'll be a specialty item in a way, but it's not like digital content doesn't have its drawbacks outside of the obvious. Like the retention thing is fascinating, but I think about digital anything, and people saying, oh, it's so environmentally friendly, and this, that, and the other. Things that's not accounted for very often are storage and heat.
Mm-hmm.
So, and power, right? So it takes storage to do these things, which eventually has to be a physical something somewhere. And that requires metal and plastic and resources, just like a tree would.
Yeah.
And that stuff is usually clustered together to somewhere that consumes a lot of power, which obviously everyone has struggles worldwide with how to, acquire power in a responsible and economic way. And then all that stuff is often staying together in data center, which collects a lot of heat. And to disperse that heat requires more power to move all that stuff out. And so, environmentally, I don't know which one, I don't know. I'm sure I imagine you do come out better, but, I wonder if there's some sort of ceiling where it's like, well, for this particular instance, you'd be better off cutting down a tree and making a book. And the kid is learning more out of the book anyway than the book with video.
I want to make clear or clarify from you. The competition was between a digital image of text and a digital multimedia image.
Sure, right.
It wasn't a paper
right.
book in hand versus a multimedia digital display.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
What they tested about
Yes.
the retention issue
Yes.
was that they retained less with a digital multimedia display
Yes.
than a digital solo
Yes.
media display.
Yes, that's
of
what they were
text.
testing. Not
Okay.
not a.
So it
Right.
wasn't paper
But you did
that
raise
made the
the
difference.
larger question of books in general.
Yes.
Right, like they were raising that question as well, right?
Yeah.
And I was playing around with, I'm familiar with what they're talking about with the textbooks and stuff. I was
Right.
playing around with, have I talked about this already? iBooks Author on the show? I can't remember. Anyway, if I have, who cares? iBooks Author is the software that Apple released that allows people to make these textbook-style things. In fact, we're using it with Polar Studios to make a couple of comics, and we're integrating some of our motion comic stuff into it as well, doing this multimedia thing that you're talking about. But for the most part, like I'm trying to use it in some places, but for the most part, let the book alone and kind of let it be a book.
Sure.
But what I like about it is coming back to Aaron's price thing is that yeah, you're right. The paid books, that like professors write so they can have written their book or
Right.
whatever, probably always going to be expensive. Probably always going to be that. But this software also allows for you to release books for free, which I think is kind of a cool thing. Anyway, it's neat software. It's interesting how it's now in the hands of anyone basically who can get it. Basically. I don't know. I think it's a cool thing.
It's the PowerPoint of its time.
I wonder how many hours one will waste preparing that.
So I want to answer one of the questions that I feel like I have a pretty definitive answer for.
Okay.
Is it a book if it's made up of images and videos and sound? And my sense is there's no reason it can't be a book just because it isn't a set of text. I mean, how many words does Where the Wild Things Are?
Yeah.
There are picture books.
You're saying you're just expanding the like picture books, regular books, picture books, comic books, multimedia books.
Yeah.
Sure.
I can put that quite comfortably into my mental category of what a book is or what a
Yeah.
novel is. Perhaps is the question. Is it a novel? If it tells it tells a narrative, I'm okay with that, making that jump.
Yeah.
I love books. Like them. There's a great tactile response to a book. I love that. It's great. But I don't know that books are really the most important part of the experience. And it's the fact that we can put information down, store it, and have someone pick it up later, and your thoughts are put directly into the head of somebody else who is reading that information. But that same thing happens if you can read sheet music well enough to really internalize what the dots and lines and squiggles mean. You hear a piece of music by looking at this written form of notation. And so if videos and sound and things are conveying that information in a similar way, it seems like it can be that's what's important about it. Is it a book versus is it a movie or a video game or whatever? Seems like the wrong argument to be having in some ways about that particular thing. On one side, why does it need to be in a category? It is chopsticks. It is this narrative that is told in this way.
Why is it called Chopsticks?
Oh, yeah, I never got to that. The reason it's called Chopsticks because the main character is, a piano prodigy. What happens is as this relationship between her and the boy begins to develop, she starts losing her ability. And eventually the boy moves away. He moves back to, I think, Argentina, which is where he's originally from, so they lose contact. And she kind of descends into this depression, and until finally her father puts her like in a home sort of thing, a rest facility, and the only thing she can play anymore is chopsticks. And then eventually, I think the end is, which is actually the beginning of the book, you find out that she's disappeared from this rest facility. And so presumably they've both are going to meet up somewhere. But it doesn't give you enough information. Well, there may be more information in the book, maybe that I just missed. But, the end of the book is they both sort of disappear, and again, presumably to meet up somewhere. Again, I think maybe the article or the way I was presenting the information, I think the debate was less about the validity between an actual book, like a handheld,
but that's clearly
paper
what
novel.
we want to argue about.
Right. But only because in the article that which we'll post later for everybody to read, they were talking more about they were tracking trends basically with the big publishers and trying to see whether this is something that's going to be around. And they said typically while sales of these e-reader type novels have increased over the last couple of years, they said each year it almost doubles in terms of the big publishing houses. I think Penguin is actually who put out this book. A third, I think, was one of the numbers. A third of their sales comes from a lot of these digital and interactive e-reader books. But again, I think the only reason they're able to survive is they still sell those physical paper books. Whereas smaller companies that they said a year or two ago that were like, oh, this is the future, let's start a company that just does this, they're now all out of business because they couldn't make any money off of it.
Right.
But
whereas another newspaper in Louisiana just shut down.
Yeah.
Or it didn't shut down, but it's going to a 3 times a week schedule because a physical book is an excellent way to deliver what fit the experience of a story, right? Whereas a printed newspaper is a terrible way to deliver immediate news.
Yep.
Well, I think it becomes an issue of preciousness. That, we can't let newspapers go out of business because they're newspapers.
But then are we restricting them to fly and embrace the new form of business? Or, it's like, we've got to preserve the old-fashioned newspaper and, but capitalism is the best thing. Well, which one is it?
Is it preservation or
evolve or die, right?
I mean, and I admit that, it would be unfortunate, printers, factories that actually manufacture newspapers are going to lose workers that way, and those workers won't be immediately able to transition over to an e-format of a newspaper, whereas the reporters might if we could monetize that. But we've all convinced ourselves so thoroughly that things on the internet should all be free no matter what, that's a problem. And I acknowledge that I don't
we
have
do have a donate button, everybody.
I know that it's not as simple a solution as all that, but this idea that we have to preserve them because they're newspapers and that's the way news has been delivered, that argument falls flat for me.
But the service should remain.
Can I counter with something?
Please,
Yeah.
that's why.
That is the same argument that a lot of people would make about supporting the arts. If it's not sustainable, why should the government give money to something that can't sustain itself?
Right. Which is why I'm constantly trying to figure out how to make it a viable business as well as an artistic endeavor.
Yeah.
Until then, I'm happy to take all government handouts
Are
that
you
are
taking the
available to
arts
me.
for art's sake kind of stance that as an evolved culture,
You need
regardless
it.
of
Yeah.
being... I mean, I am not disagreeing.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And well, and as someone who's producing the kind of stuff that we're producing, that is trying to make it financially not even profitable, it's self-sustaining. Like we're actively losing a lot of money by doing the podcast. However, in the arts for art's sake kind of way, this podcast is worth it for me. You know what I mean? So I want this show to exist, and I'm damn well willing to pay the cost of hosting and the cost of the equipment so that we can do the show better and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the time investment, that we're putting into it when we could be doing other stuff that would be actually, earning us money.
Yeah.
But I also...
But this is, no.
Sorry. As I've had a moment to think while someone else was talking, I'm not arguing against news and investigation and reporting. I think those are all viable and important and should be sustained. It's that particular medium. So then the argument becomes, well, what about theater versus movies or something to that effect?
Mm-hmm.
But I think they deliver different experiences, whereas for me, and this is, again, the internet, I don't have to justify that it's an opinion, but for me, the only difference between reading a newspaper article on newspaper and on a screen is whether my fingers have smudgy black ink on them afterwards. I believe that you do get a different experience telling a story, putting on a show in a live environment with performers than you do going to see a movie. I think those are two different experiences rather than a modernized version of one experience to the next.
Yeah.
Like, I just saw a show where there was a whole scene about them chugging champagne back and forth, and she apparently could not make that last swallow of ginger ale go down as fast as she was supposed to, and there was this lovely live moment of her nearly choking to death on stage while the other player tried to make her laugh even harder. And that's not the only benefit of live theater, but it's one of those little...
So you're saying we should give money to watch people choke to death on stage?
Death sports, I think, would really be financially advantageous. And I think the government should support watching people choke on ginger ale on stage.
Next up, feeding Christians to lions.
Wow.
Right?
I'm about to say we just lost a whole contingent of our audience, but
They probably
know.
won't
I don't know if
They-
that's true.
Yeah, they've already left. Come back. We can change.
I
No, we
can't.
can't.
I
No, we
can't.
It's probably it's almost that time, gents.
I suppose it is.
This is the first podcast that we've done that I really feel like the conversation's not done. Does
We could
is
do
anybody
a
else
part
feeling that? I don't think we have to do a part two, but yeah.
But that we open more
He's like-
questions than we really
Yes,
successfully
I agree. Yeah,
we
yeah.
debated, discussed.
Yeah.
But maybe, I mean, that's good. That's that whole Asian Yugen thing. Look it up.
Yugen.
Yugen.
Yugen. Oh, and
The
now we're
robots are
popping.
invading, so we must sign
All right,
off.
the robots are yelling at us. It's time to go. I think we should say bye.
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 Oh,
Sign off.
I'm Aaron, and I sound like a robot.
My name is Adam, and I am a robot.
my name is Jeff, and I would like to date a robot.
Theme song.
Have I got
Goodbye.
a girl for you?